Hello, it's Deborah from the attic, and today I've got the latest Simon Says stamp kit and we're going to see what's inside. So we start out with 3 colours of cardstock: red, white and, if I can get this, green, lovely Christmassy colours. Some nice bright red sequins, that's perfect if we want to make some shaker cards or add a little bit of detail to our finished cards. There's a full distress oxide ink pad. This one is Festive Berries and it's a lovely rich red. There are a set of little Daniel Smith watercolours. There are 4 colours here. I haven't actually smudged them yet, so we'll have a little play with those later on. There's a nice red tag, and it's red on both sides. Lollipop, that's for me. There are 2 images on watercolour cards, which match really nicely with the watercolours that were included. Then there are some envelopes. I love the envelopes. Sometimes they don't always remain as envelopes. Sometimes they are cannibalised to become part of a card, because I love that pearlized finish. It's great. I don't know if I'm going to do that with these at this stage, but I do like, one thing I want to call out is I love that colour scheme. That light blue, the white and the red, and I think that's very joyful and holiday-ish, and I really like that colour combo. There's a double-sided set of A6 papers in the pad with a few images that you could cut out and use on your cards, or also really nice background papers as well. So I'll just have a little flip through so you can see what's in here. This is great, this naughty or nice checklist. That's really nice. I'd like to use that in some way on one of my cards. And this is nice as well, Santa's sleigh, and to all a good night is what the words say underneath it. So that's there to be played with as well. And then this is a die of candy canes. This is a wafer thin die set, and it has a bow as well. So there are 3 parts to this die. There are the little sticks, candy canes, then there is the bow itself, and then there is the centre of the bow. There are 3 cards in that beautiful colour. I do like that blue, it's a lovely colour. And the stamp set is terrific. There's loads of options with this stamp set. So you've got a great big Santa here at the bottom. You've got a really nice pole, sort of like a North Pole pole. A Christmas tree, there are some stamps, there are some snowflakes, there are some lovely festive wishes and some snowfall here. And this is a really comprehensive stamp set actually. You've got everything on there that you could want to make a whole variety of different style Christmas cards. And then finally there is a set of custom sheets of stickers. I think I only have 1, but I believe in the full kits there should be, I hope you can see that, there should be 2 of these, but that's okay, we can work with what we have. So let's see what we can make with all of those goodies. Because I love that blue colour so much, to begin with I'm going to maximise on that by taking those side folding cards and just cutting through the spine, so that instead of having a side folding card I've got separate panels, and I've given myself 6 of these blue panels. This is just to show you I've cut off the spines from those cards. With the other card in the kit I've cut it into sets of 4, so that I have 4 card fronts in green and in red. The 2 white cards I've cut in half and I've used to create side folding cards. So for our first card I've taken this sheet from the paper pack and I want to cut it down in such a way that I leave the mountains at the top of the card. I'm going to cut this down, and then when I've made sure that the panel is an exactly right fit to go on the front of my blue card, I'm going to cut down the mountains. So I'm just going to cut out the shape of the mountains there. I'm going to glue this onto my card, and I'm using a Cosmic Shimmer Specialist Acrylic Glue. The glue doesn't shimmer, that's just the name of the company. That threw me for a long time. Why do you need glue that shimmers? So now that I've glued my panel down onto my blue card, I want to show you a little cheat using some of the packaging. So I do like to get my laminator out, but on this occasion I thought, well, what's another way that I could show you if you don't have a laminator? So I'm using the packaging that the stamp set came in, and that little back is a sticky line you can see I can glue that onto my card, and then all I need to do is cut around the packaging that's left over and it will be a perfect fit for my card. So now I've got a nice shiny front, and there are a couple of ways that you can jazz this up. If you have some Nuvo glitter drops or any Nuvo sparkly drops that you want to add to that, you can just put the little dots on and let them dry. I'm going to use my glue pen and I'm going to add tiny little dots over the front of the plastic, and then I'm going to use a very fine sparkly glitter to sprinkle all over my little glue dots. It's difficult to show you this under the lights. I will find a way. You can just about see the little dots being picked up where the light pools on the plastic, but I've got a piece of red card, and if I slip that underneath, I think that gives you a better idea of how the glue and the glitter make it look like a shimmery snow scene. And all I need to do now is glue that to a white top folding card. For my second card, I've got a piece of red base card, and then I've cut a piece of the blue card from one of the paper sheets that I'll stick on the top. I've got a piece of plain white card here, and I'm cutting a curve because this is going to be a little snow drift. I want to make sure that that fits perfectly at the bottom of my card, and I'm going to add some craft foam at the back of my card to give it a little bit of dimension. I'm just cutting that down now, and then I'll glue it into position. I'm using my very fine glitter again and my Cosmic Shimmer glue, and I'm adding a line of glue to the top of my snowdrift. While the glue is still wet, I'm going to throw some of that sparkle over the top of it, and that will make it look as if I have a frosty hill. I'll bring in my red card again so that hopefully you can see that a little bit more clearly. So my snow hill will sit at the bottom of my card, and now I'm going to use some of the lovely thick stickers that are included in the kit. So I've got my Santa with the big sack, and I'm also going to take one of the sentiments that says Santa's Workshop on the arrow, and that's pointing him in the right direction. I've put a little sentiment at the bottom, stamped that in black ink, and that's my card complete. Card 3, I absolutely loved this piece of paper, but it gave me some problems because it's too big to fit onto a card. So how do you cut it down so you can actually use it in a card? Here's my solution. I've cut down the 2 panels that have the dates on them so that children could write down accomplishments and scores on those, and I'm going to use the naughty or nice monthly checklist to go on the bottom of the card. So I've cut it down and I'm going to add glue along the sides and the bottom so that this will act as a pocket into which you can slip the 2 dated panels where accomplishments and scores etc. can be marked down. So this is rather like an advent card, but it's a checklist for children, so when it comes closer to Christmas they can decide if they've been naughty or nice, and the 2 cards will just slip into the pocket at the bottom. The way that I've come up with to solve the problem of the hole in the bottom pocket is to use one of the lovely little snowflake stickers from the cardboard pack. And because those stickers are tacky rather than sticky, it doesn't stop you putting the little pieces of card in the back behind it. And all you need to do is glue it to the front of a top folding card. For card 4, I wanted to show you something different. So I've taken a piece of tracing paper, although you could use parchment paper if you have it, and I've taken my lightest StazOn ink, in this case it's a grey, and I've inked up and stamped the Christmas tree. I've got a round-ended parchment tool. This is quite a narrow end. You could also use tools that are used for nail art that are very, very similar to this, maybe a little bit cheaper as well, and they give you this nice rounded nib to allow you to trace the tree onto the parchment. The reason for using the StazOn ink is because it will dry immediately and you won't get ink all over your hands as you work. I've traced the outline of the star, and this is how it will look when I turn my parchment or tracing paper over. I'm going to continue doing the rest of the tree, just the outline and the baubles, and then I'll show you some ways that we can make it stand out a little bit more. I'm going to use a green card, so I need to see how strongly the tree stands out against the green. And the answer is not very, so I'm going to take my tool again and I'm going to fill in those little baubles that are on the tree. I can make the tree stand out even more by adding little thin lines so it looks as if it's a whole load of fir branches hanging down. My tree stands out far more than it did to begin with, and I've cut out a frame, a little thin frame from the same colour of green, and I want to glue this onto my card. I don't want the glue to show, however, so the way that I've got around this is by keeping the frame held in place where it will be on the front of my card. I've got a pencil and I'm going to just trace a pencil line around that frame, so the pencil line will show me where the frame will go eventually, and therefore where I'm safe to add a line of glue and it won't be seen. I'm going to add my first line of glue using a fine glue pen onto the parchment. This will allow me to stick the frame to the front of my design without leaving any glue marks at all. I'll just put that into position and firm it down. And then if I turn the design over to the reverse, I can add another layer of glue on the inside, and this will stick the whole design to the green card background. If you want, you can add snowflake designs down the outside of that frame. I've left it plain because I just want to give you the concept, and then you can fly with that as you choose. You could do it with the large Santa as well on the sleigh. That would be a nice way to use this technique too. So now for a nice, quick, simple card. I've cut down some strips of paper from the paper pack, and I'm going to add little notches into the bottom of them so they look like banners. I'm going to glue those into position on my red card, and I'm going to add, for contrast, those strips of blue. I really do love this red and blue combination. I think it's so joyful and so festive. I'm going to cut down anything that hangs over the top of my card. And then I'm going to reach for one of the chipboard stickers again. This is the one that reads "Greetings from the North Pole," and then there's a little gap and you can fill in how many days until Christmas. I haven't filled anything in because that's up to you. It depends when you give your card to the recipient. But that glues down in place, and then I'm going to take my sequins. I'm going to add dots of glue all over the card, and I'm going to add my sequins to give the card a little bit of sparkle, so I'll just glue them onto the front. And with that, my card is complete, and all I need to do is stick it to the front of a white side folding card. For card 6, we're using the packaging again since we have some of this left over. Now this is in place of me using my laminator, so some of you who know my videos will know that I do like to make use of my laminator for unconventional crafting purposes. I've got a red top folding card and I've cut out an aperture, and this is just large enough for me to use the die cut of the candy canes. I've cut the candy canes from white card and the ribbon and the little centre piece of the bow from red card. I've decided where exactly I need to position the candy canes so that they will fit in the centre of the aperture, and I'm using a very fine glue nozzle to add tiny little spots of glue to the reverse of my candy canes. This won't show through if I do it neatly enough. Now I can glue the bow onto the front of my candy canes, and I can add that tiny little detail of the bow as well. So the candy canes are enclosed within the plastic packaging, and the bow is on the top, on the outside. I've got another frame, and it's got the same aperture as the frame of the card, and I'm going to use that to make sure the inside of the card remains neat. So I'm adding the card to the reverse of the candy canes. You can see we've got a definite front and a back. The reason I'm doing it that way is because when everything is glued together and this internal frame is glued onto the inside of the card, there will be the matte finish of the card visible rather than the shiny of the plastic packaging. Now I need to glue everything in place, and I've got 2 layers of plastic that I need to glue together so that nothing falls out. And now you'll see, when I put this into position and open the card, you can see I've got a matte card finish on the inside, and it just makes it look a lot neater. I'm going to take one of the sentiment stamps from the kit, and I'm just going to add this at the bottom of my card, and I'm going to use some white heat embossing powder, and I'm going to complete that sentiment before I glue the design into the centre of the card. Because I'm going to use my heat gun, it makes sense to do it that way around. I'm using a piece of waste paper underneath just to make sure I don't make a mess on my craft desk, and I'm using an instant tack tape runner because this will attach the design immediately and there won't be the risk that it will move. If I'd used a fluid glue, there was always a risk that it would move. It just means that I've got to line up both frames really precisely. But that's my card complete. Let's do something nice and simple for card 7. I'm using one of the sheets of paper from the pack, and I've also selected one of the little cards from that you can cut out from one of the paper sheets as well. This is a very, very old punch that I have, but it will cut out a nice little curve at the bottom of my red piece of paper, and it will add a little bit of extra interest to my card. I'm going to glue these into position on my card, and then I'm going to take some ribbon. I'm going to decide exactly where I want my pieces of ribbon to go, and then I'm going to get my scissors and just cut a notch, and the notch will help keep the ribbon in position. Now I'm going to take my ribbon and tie it in a bow around the top of the card. You may also notice that I've also added a little jack-in-the-box at the bottom. This is one of the cardboard stickers, and a little star at the top. Cards 8 and 9 are going to use a technique that I've used in videos before. This is a way to make a nighttime snowy scene. I've got a white top folding card and I've cut out a piece of scrap card with a curve on it, and this is going to be a hill. I want to use my little Bambi character on my card, so I'm just going to get an idea of where that will fit to make sure I'm happy with the location of my hill, and I've used some repositionable tape to hold my yellow paper hill in place. Now I've got two colours of Distress Oxide. I'm using Faded Jeans to create the bulk of my night sky, and I'm going to use Wilted Violet to go around the outside edges to give the colour a little bit more interest and a little bit more depth as well, because a night sky is never one solid block colour. Don't worry about the blending at this point because we will be changing this background, so the blending will be less of an issue. Let me pull this out and show you the result. You've got that beautiful piece of white snow at the bottom of your card, and my Bambi will sit really nicely there. I'm going to add a sentiment in black ink to the bottom of my little snow hill, and I'm going to use a sentiment that reads "Sending Christmas Cheer." It's going to sit right there in the bottom left corner. I'm going to use my Bambi as a visual marker just to give me an idea as to where I want to position my snowflakes. I've taken the snowflakes from the stamp set and I've mounted them onto my round acrylic block stamps, and I'm going to scatter these throughout the night sky. I don't want any of them to go underneath the Bambi. I want to have a little space around that character. Once I've got them all stamped out, I'm going to remove my little Bambi. I didn't stick him down very firmly, it's just resting on my card there. I'm going to take my white embossing powder, sprinkle it over my card, and then I'm going to heat set all of these lovely little snowflakes. And now that they're all heat set, that's how the card looks, and I'm going to bring back my Bambi character and slot it right in between all of those snowflakes, and this time I'm going to stick it down quite firmly, and that's my card complete. For my next card, I did exactly the same technique for the night sky, and this time I've added a different sentiment at the bottom. I stamped out and I cut out the North Pole sign, and I stamped it up with "This way to Santa's workshop," and I used pencils just to colour in the pole in red and in blue. This time we're going to do something different on the night sky. I'm going to take this rather nice chunky white and gold embossing powder, and I'm going to sprinkle it over the night sky. Now at the moment there's no way for that to adhere to the ink on the card, so I've got to be quite careful that when I add it, it's not going to I'm not going to let it drop all over my workspace, and when I come to heat it, I'm going to heat it from the base to begin with. So I'm going to get my heat gun nice and hot. I'm going to give it a few seconds before I actually put it underneath the card, and by adding the heat from below, it will melt the embossing powder into the card, and then when I think there's less risk that that is going to blow all over the place, I can use my heat gun from the top to make sure that I finally get all of that embossing powder sealed down on the card. I can add glue to the reverse of my North Pole sign, and I can glue that into position on the card in the bottom right. I think that card is quite magical because the melted embossing powder looks like snowfall in the background. It makes a lovely wintry scene. Our final card is going to be quite traditional. There are so many different options with this card kit, but because there was some beautiful paper that had holly and berries, I thought I want to use that, and I just want to do something that is red, gold and green. So I'm using the postage stamp stamps, and I'm going to go over those with gold embossing powder, and I'm going to heat set those in place. I really loved the postage stamps. I thought they were a great addition to this kit. There are many different ways that you could use this, but this way I get to use my favourite one many times. I've got some gold thread and I'm just going to wind this around my piece of green card and tie a bow. I can mount this now onto a piece of red card that is slightly larger than the green card, and that will give it a nice narrow frame. And I'll show you the papers from the pack that this is going to be mounted on. This is the holly paper, and I thought this was really beautiful, and I'm going to mount that onto a piece of green card. I want to add some dimension to the front design, so I've taken some of my craft foam and cut it in half, and I'm just going to add a couple of pieces to the reverse of the design. Now I'm going to glue the paper onto the card. It was really difficult to glue over the paper on the reverse because that was also very, very attractive. It's difficult when they're double-sided, you've got to make hard decisions. And now I'm going to add the final design to the front of the card, and it's that simple. It's a lovely traditional card. This kit gave you so many different options, so many different cards that you could make, that I decided I was going to focus on giving you lots and lots of different techniques, and I hope those techniques will inspire your own creativity. I'm going to leave you with a close-up now of all the cards that we've made today. Thank you very much for watching, as always, and I hope we'll see each other again soon. Take care.